welcome to Stacking Stones podcast. Hey everyone, I'm Pastor Mark, and today we have with us Heather Phinney from Texas. Say hello, Heather, if you would, to the audience.
Hey everybody.
So good to have you on the show. I'm really excited about hearing what God's done in your life. For those of you that may be new to the podcast, Stacking Stones podcast, really, we just have one focus, one purpose, and that's to testify about hearing God and seeing his miracles. So today, Heather is going to share with us a miracle that happened in her life and how that impacted her family, how that impacted her faith, and really looking forward to hearing that today, Heather. But before we do, would you just give a brief intro, tell a little bit about yourself, family, kids, all that kind of stuff, and then we'll go from there. Is that cool?
Okay. Yes. First of all, so honored and humbled that you would ask me to do this. I'm just in awe of what God's continuing to do with his story. But yes, I'm Heather Phinney. I'm from Texas. I am married to Jason Phinney, and we will celebrate 30 years of marriage this July. So that's pretty awesome. That's right. We have two boys, Austin and Will, and they both are married within the last 2 years. Austin and his wife Ever married in May of 2021. And Will and Abby Claire just celebrated their 1-year anniversary yesterday, married 1 year. So we are overjoyed and astounded by the answered prayers of precious daughter-in-laws in our life. The Lord has been so gracious. Both couples live in the Fort Worth area, not far from us. So we're in a fun season of life. Yeah, it's fun. So just happy to be here with you today, Mark. Awesome.
Well, tell us a little bit about what you're going to share today and what happened.
Yeah, when you hear of God at work in unbelievable ways in other people's lives and you rejoice with them and you think, that's so wonderful for them, but you just think, he's probably not going to do that for me. That's where my story begins. It was in April of 2015. It was a Friday night where the story starts to unfold, where God begins his work. But I was heartbroken. My heart was in pieces. We were struggling with parenting teens. We were facing a possible job change for my husband that would include a move to Arizona. And we had raised these boys in Texas from day one. They were freshmen and juniors in high school at the time. So critical time to not want to leave their friends. My oldest brother was facing a kidney transplant that my dad had passed away from the same kidney disease. And my father-in-law had MS and he was hospitalized at the time. So life just felt really heavy. I can specifically remember spending that weekend saying, Lord, are you knowing what's going on here? Like, do you see any of this? Because this is a lot and it feels heavy and you just feel like, I just want to pull the shades. Like he obviously doesn't see me. He's doing things for other people, but I just like take care of one of these things for me. Right. So that was Friday night, and I can remember Saturday morning going for a walk in our neighborhood, and it was the same path that I walked multiple times a week. And I was just so overcome with all that was going on. And I remember listening to a worship song in my AirPods, and I just sat down on the curb and on a random street, and I just cried. And really crying out to the Lord, like, I need to see you move in something here. And there was another woman walking that I had never seen before that came and sat down on the curb next to me and said, I know you don't know me, but I just feel like the Lord wants me to tell you that he sees you and he's real. She handed me a tissue out of her little fanny pack, her little exercise, band, and said, have a great day. And Mark, I've never seen that woman again to this day. And I walked that same path. So I was like, okay, God, you do see me. Like, thank you for that. I was just really astounded with that. Like, where did she come from? I don't know. So that was Saturday. Then that following Monday, my mom had texted me to remind me that the healing rooms were open for prayer that Monday night. And I'll give a little background there. I had not been before. That was something my mom and my oldest son Austin had done together before standardized testing. The ACT was coming up, and so that's why she was like, maybe y'all could go for prayer. He had been diagnosed with a learning disability in math, and so it was like any opportunity to pray and ask Jesus for help when it came to this stuff, we were on it, right? But she was on it with him for that. And so I thought, well, after the weekend we've had, he's probably not going to want to go there with me. And so I texted him. He was at school, and I texted and said, hey, the healing rooms are open tonight. Would you like to go? Immediately texted back, yes. And I was like, that means I have to go. So if I'm honest, I was nervous about going. I really didn't know what to expect when I got there.
So you hadn't actually been there before?
No, okay, I had not. No.
Cool. Interesting.
I've described it to people since that night of people just coming and desperately wanting a touch from the Lord, just coming so expectant. And I said to somebody too, like explained it that when there's volunteers at church that want to rock the babies, or the people that were just born to be a greeter at the church, or show up to help hormonal youth on a Wednesday night, right? Like all those volunteers, these people that were there at the prayer rooms were those people that just wanted to agree with you in prayer for what the Lord would do in your life, and to be expectant and just to pray big, bold prayers. So we walked in, and as it always goes, God had prepared a story that I never, ever would have imagined. Isaiah 55:8-9, I want to just say this. My thoughts are nothing like your thoughts, says the Lord. My ways are far beyond anything you could imagine. And for just as the heavens are higher than the earth, so my ways are higher than your ways, and my thoughts higher than your thoughts. And man, his plans for us that night were so beyond anything that I could have imagined. So Austin, they ask you to fill out a clipboard, just tell, a little bit about why you're there for prayer. Austin had done that, and we just kind of waited our turn. They had different, maybe one or two people that would come call you up and stand just in a little prayer circle to pray. And so we had two individuals, I remember their names were Rob and Elizabeth, came and said, Austin, Heather, come with us. So we just began to pray, and they were precious. They just spoke to Austin, were so encouraging to him about just his want to at 17 years old to come and pray and hear from the Lord.
That's a big deal. Cool.
Just to be encouraged with that. So we prayed and had a precious time with them. And after we prayed, Elizabeth, there was another gentleman that walked up to our circle, and Elizabeth said, let me introduce you. This is Carl. When Carl comes up, we know that the Lord's given him something to say. So Carl, what do you have to say?
So let me interrupt you.
Yes.
You said Elizabeth. Was Elizabeth the name of someone who was already praying with you?
Elizabeth and Rob were I don't believe they were husband and wife, but they were just the two volunteers that had gotten Austin. So it was just the four of us originally, Austin and I, and then Elizabeth and Rob that were the volunteers from the healing room that night. Okay. So then Carl was another volunteer that walked up.
Okay, cool.
So he approached, and she just said, Carl, what do you have to say? So he turned and encouraged Austin in some things. And then he turned and looked at me, and he said, Mom, how's your physical health? And I'm like, hold up. Like, first of all, I did not fill out a clipboard. This man knows nothing about me. Like, Austin filled out his form, of what to be prayed for. I was just the mom coming along and bringing the son. And I thought, I'm not really sure how he knows this, but I was like, okay, what he didn't know was what I shared with you a little bit. Like, my rheumatoid arthritis was crippling at the point. Like, my hair was falling out at that time. Stress exacerbates that. And so with everything I said at the beginning, with the possible move, the just hard times with teens, just my brother facing the transplant, my father-in-law hospitalized, like all of those things, I'm thinking, well, it's not real good, but I'm going to tell this man because I have no idea who he is. And I'm just being so honest. I was like, oh, it's fine. and trying so not hard not to cry. And he said, well, Mom, I know you came for your son, but I'm asking you, how's your physical health? Mark, like, I just burst into tears. Like, what in the world? I thought, how does he know to ask me that? So I was blown away. And then at that point, I mean, I'm just crying because I'm just like, okay, I got to be honest and tell him. So I told him all the things I just told you. And we all prayed together, the 5 of us that were standing there. And he asked me after we prayed, do you feel anything different? And I thought, oh boy, this is where the enemy came in. He was like, you didn't feel like heat in your back or something like that, where I had heard of when other people have been healed, like maybe they felt something physically, right? Like that they felt a burning sensation or whatever. And I was like, I said, I don't think so. I was just so like, what do I say? And then enemy's like, you know what? This is dumb. Like already, like in my head, I'm feeling all of that. And
right then, when he asked you, you're hearing all that.
I really felt like the enemy said, now what are you going to do? What are you going to say? Like, are you going to make something up or what? So I honestly told him, like, I didn't feel anything like change in my body. Okay. So we left. Went home, it was a Monday night and there's homework to be done, all of the things. So I didn't really think a lot more about it. Austin and I walked out together, and I can remember saying to him, this is so silly now that I think about it, but I said to him, I'm sorry they prayed for me too. And he's like, seriously? Like, it's so awesome they prayed for both of us, but in my mind as a mom, I was like, but we were there for him. And the Lord's like, yeah, but guess what? I got something for you too, so this is how I work. And so went to bed Monday night, didn't think much more about it, and woke up early Tuesday morning. And it was April, so I'm pretty sure it was spring football. So it was very early. Those years of moms.
Can I interrupt you one quick second? So before you tell me about Tuesday morning, how long had you had or been diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis? This point
17
in your life.
17 years. 17 years, and I'll get to that. Yeah.
Wow. Okay, go ahead. Yeah. Thanks.
A long time. Yes, you bet. So Tuesday morning, woke up, alarm clock goes off, and I'm thinking, oh, it cannot be time to already get these boys to football practice or school, whatever was going on. And so I laid there for a few minutes, and so I can't even say it without tearing up, but so sweetly, Mark heard the Lord say to me, I healed you last night, Heather. And I laid there and thought, okay, I'm making that up, and I've explained to people since then too. It's like, I've heard the Lord say, to me before, like, reach out to that person, or, when the Holy Spirit just impresses something on you like that. But this was so different. I was just like, where did that come from? You're kind of still laying in bed, but I'm kind of doing this, like, who said that? And so I can remember saying to the Lord, like, how do I know? Like, how do I know I'm not making this up in my head? And he just so sweetly replied in the same way that he told me I was healed. He said, just walk it out. Just walk it out. So in my trusting way of walking it out, I kept it to myself for 2 days. Didn't even tell my husband. I was testing him, if I'm honest. I would have back pain or things like that, or things like sitting on our kitchen bar stools, stuff like that would be very uncomfortable at the time. Exercising and those kind of things, just at times when it was exacerbated, were difficult. So I tested him for 2 days, and then he's like, "You gonna tell your husband?"
So you're checking all of these things,
all of
right?
Just me and the Lord. Okay, I'm just cool. Like, because I had, I think, again, if I'm honest too, the enemy was like, nothing happened. Like, why do you think something happened? And I'm like, because I know the Lord told me that, and I have to stand on that. And he told me to walk it out. So you shut up. I was just like, no. So I finally said to my husband, we were going to go on a walk that Thursday night. And I said to him, hey, I got something to tell you. He's like, oh, please, nothing else. Life was heavy for him because he was doing all of these things too. And I said, I just have to tell you, I can remember where we were in the neighborhood behind us that we walk in. And I said, the Lord healed me when I went to the healing rooms with Austin. He's like, what? And I said, yeah, he told me he healed me. He's like, what do you mean? So, we go through this whole thing. And then I told him, I said, but I'm doubting. I said, I'm doubting. And I said, he's like, well, what did the Lord say? And so I said, he told me to walk it out. And he's like, you don't have to have all the answers because God does. He's like, then that's what we do. We just walk it out. So by that was midweek, like Thursday. By that Saturday, I knew I had to tell my mom. My mom, if anybody had prayed for me since the day I was diagnosed, it was my mother, my sweet mother. So I was getting myself ready. Yes, I was getting myself ready to go see her, and I was blow drying my hair. And the Lord said to me, go look up the date of Easter 1998. And I thought, okay, no, really, I was like, that's cuckoo. I don't even know why he would say that. So I kept blow drying my hair and I ignored it. And he said, go look up the date of Easter 1998. So as I flipped my laptop open to Google, when was Easter 1998? He reminded me that I had been diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis on April 12th of 1998. And that was Easter weekend. So Austin he was probably about 5 months old at that point. I think my husband was glad that we finally had a diagnosis. I had a lot of testing and things done, but if I'm honest, I was devastated. I'm like, I am too young to have this disease. But for people that don't think God's in the details, like you and I sharing before we hit record, just the details of what God was doing in your life. After I had Googled that date, the Lord showed me that it had been 17 years, almost to the day, that from when I was diagnosed to in April of April 1998 to April in 2015 when he healed me. And I thought, well, that's kind of cool. Like it was April 12th, 13th. And I thought, that's cool, but I don't really know, what that means. So I went out to tell my husband before I left to go share with my mom. And he said, he came in. And before I left, he said, hey, come here. And the Lord had prompted him to go look up what the biblical significance of the number 17 was. And I thought, I never thought to do that. You know what it is? You know what the significance is?
No.
Let me tell you, it's over. So the number 17 in the Bible represents overcoming the enemy and complete victory.
Wow.
Like, he did that for me. Like, that was just so overwhelming to me. Like, I will never forget that was just blown away still, like this many years later, right? Like that he chose to do that for me. But if I'm honest, there's still a little part of the testimony that was unfolding from then. I had a follow-up appointment. I went for all those years to see a rheumatologist like every 6 weeks. I had given myself injections weekly for the disease, and I took oral meds as well. So my next appointment was coming up, and if I'm honest, Mark, I was terrified to go.
So before you go there, so back at the 17, when the day you're blow drying your hair, you looked up the date, and then it was when you were telling your husband, and he looked up 17.
Yes, he did.
And then did you ever get to tell your mom? Was that happened in there too?
So I went, told my mom, then shared with other family and, all the things, but it was still one of those things of like, I was walking it out. And it was easy to share with some because, we had college friends and some people like that had they had known me since those young adult years when I was a young mom. My dad had passed away when I was 29. So there was a lot, and so a lot of them had seen me in those suffering years, if you will, trying to, grieve the loss of my dad at such a young age. and then just trying to raise kids, and do this. I had in that time after my dad died and I was diagnosed, I had 2 carpal tunnel surgeries and a rheumatoid mass removed from my wrist. So it was just like, yeah, I was sharing during that time, but I still kind of held it a little bit close to the vest, if you will. Like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do with this. Like, is the Lord going to give me an opportunity to share, or am I just supposed to tell the people around me? Which I'm sure he was just like, Heather, just walk it out. I told you, it was very simple. Just walk it out, But goodness, we as humans, like, just complicate it more than it needs to be, right? But no, that was a sweet time of just encouraging, like, my close family members and friends is probably where I started first to share. So I went to that next rheumatologist appointment, and I was petrified to tell my doctor, which everybody might be like, why? Like, just be like, I'm healed. I don't have to be here anymore. Well, my doctor was not a believer. And I just remember thinking, okay, I'm sitting there waiting for her to come in. And I thought, first of all, I need a barf bag because I was so nervous. Second of all, I thought, I'm just going to tell her that I feel good, but I'm not going to, like, tell her the Lord healed me. And the Lord's like, yeah, no, you're going to tell her what I did for you. And I was like, okay. And the door opens, you hear them getting a little clipboard of your chart out, on the door or whatever. And so she walked in, and I can remember just saying, like, this is what I'm sobbing. She's like, why are you crying? And I said, because I'm so overwhelmed that the Lord did this. Well, of course, in her medical way, she basically was like, this doesn't really happen. Like, once you start these kind of meds, like, you're on them for forever. So, here comes doubt creeping in, and I'm like, well, I said, can we agree to, like, lessen my meds, like, this next 6 weeks till I see you again and just see how that goes. So she agreed to do that. But she said, I want to do a disease activity test. It was a blood test. And she said, that will show me for sure. And so I think in her mind, it was like, that's going to come back, and she still has rheumatoid arthritis. And in my mind, I'm like, Lord, you better show up again, right? Like, I'm waiting. So literally, Mark, 6 weeks, I'm waiting. And the enemy's having a heyday in my head. Like, what do you think that's, Test is going to say? Well, what if she comes back and says, nope, you can't get off meds? Like, what are you going to do? And I finally, one point said to my husband, I said, this is stressing me out. And he said, what do you want? Do you want, like, the paper that comes back to, like, say H for healed on it? And I said, yeah, maybe I do. I don't know if just in my humanness, right? I was just like, okay, I'm going to share this, but I'm also going to take the paper that says H for healed, Heather is healed, I think that's what I was waiting for. So fast forward, she did come. I went back, it was probably 6 weeks again, because that was usually my set time. And she just said, I'm really concerned for you to come off of these meds. She said, and I told her, I said, we had to, as a couple, a husband and wife, trust the Lord. And we prayed about it before I started the injections, before I started the oral meds. And it was like, I needed a quality of life. I was a young mom, and my dad had just died. And I was like, I have to be able to function. I don't have the luxury of pulling the shades and getting under the covers and somebody else to raise these babies right now, So I just told her, I said, I'm not worried about it. Like, the Lord took care of it all that time. We didn't know it was a newer drug at the time. So there wasn't 10 years of data to know what it was going to do, 10 years down the road, to your body. But we trusted the Lord that was what I needed to do at the time. And so she just said, I said to her, well, what about the disease activity test that you took? I'm waiting for the H to come out. And she had it folded on a piece of paper, and she handed it to me, and I opened it. Well, it's like this scale, and I'm like, okay, well, put this in real people terms, patient terms, like, what is this? And she said, well, you scored a 16 on a scale from 0 to 100. And I'm like, okay, I still don't know what that means. I said, well, what does that mean? And she said, it means you don't have rheumatoid arthritis. And I said, what? And literally,
she didn't want to tell you that. She did not lead with
way
that.
of patient doctor, I literally shoved her arm and said, shut up. And she just looked at me like, but it was like, it wasn't an actual H that, she had written on there, but it was the H that I needed. It was,
right.
You've been healed. And I
find that fascinating that she did not lead with that. That she talked to you about all this, and then she gave you the folded paper.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Wow.
Yeah. Just like, oh, by the way. Yeah. So
wow.
but I did face too. And I want to say this, what the Lord had done for me was so remarkable, but I also felt like, why me? Like I had family members that needed a real touch from the Lord. I didn't want my brother to have to go through a kidney transplant. I wanted my father-in-law to be touched and be healed from MS. I was like, why me, Lord? Like, why? Like, there's so many other people that I felt were more deserving, if you will, or just more desperate. I don't know. Like that may sound weird just to say it that way, but I remember my husband saying to me, why not you? And I was like, oh,
love
and
that.
He was like, he said, the Lord knows you're going to share of his amazing goodness with others and his healing power. And I'm like, wow, like he's trusting me with this testimony to do that. And that's just so still this long after, right? Is still so amazing. So
that really, is amazing. Like it's still huge.
I know.
It's so much fun to listen.
So it's been 8 years, and I was reviewing, kind of going over this before you and I got on. And if I'm honest, I'm continuing to walk it out. Like the Lord just showing how he wants to use this, like how you and I met just a few weeks ago, right? Like I was sharing this testimony with a small group of women in Bible study. And then our connection with Ann hearing, that's what do I have time to still share?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So the Lord continues to teach me so many things through this, but one that stands out so much is obedience. I think about how many times the Lord asked me to do something, right? Like, Heather, go talk to that lady at the grocery store, or go over and pray for that person, or, even just a phone call, right? Like putting somebody on your heart, like, call Mark, check on him, whatever, call your friend, like check on him, family member, whatever it is. And so many times I'm like, I'm kind of tired, or like, that's out of my comfort zone, or surely somebody else is going to do it. Right. But I think, Mark, how different would this story be if Carl had not been obedient that night? Right. Like,
oh yeah,
he wasn't even part of our initial prayer group. I hadn't filled out a prayer form. He knew nothing about me. And I think Carl heard from the Lord that night. I don't know where he was standing in the auditorium, but the Lord said, go over to that lady with her son and ask her how her physical health is. And I'm thinking the boldness and the obedience that took for him to step out and be like, because what if I had just continued to say, oh, I'm fine, which I could have, right? But I'm so grateful that he obeyed. And that's just something for me that I'm just like, the Lord can use all of us, right? And it's just literally that step of obedience. It's just to say, okay, Lord, I don't know what to say. And I think we get caught up in that so much of, what if I don't have the right thing to say? What if I don't remember the scripture that I memorized when I was 7 years old that would be perfect for right now, but I just can't recall it? And he's just like, will you just say yes? And then I'll do the rest. And I came back to the healing room like 2 weeks later, because I was like, I got to find Carl, and I got to find out how he knew. I had all these questions, right? So I went and I asked, I'm like, is Carl here? And I'm sure they were like, crazy in the foyer of the church wants to talk to Carl. It's in security too. But he was so precious and came out. And I said, I don't know if you remember who I am, But I said, I was here with my son and you prayed for us and you prayed for me to be healed from rheumatoid arthritis. And I said, I just have to tell you, in all of my questions of like, how did he know? What in the world? Just completely turned to thankfulness for his obedience. And I said, I just have to tell you, the Lord healed me that night. And he was so touched, right? Because for those of you that had been at the healing rooms or volunteered at the healing rooms, like, he's like, there's so many times that we don't know, Heather, like if people have gotten a touch from the Lord, right? So it was encouraging to him too, right? Like to see, like I obeyed and the Lord, and we don't always get to see that, this side of heaven, but it was just such an encouraging time. And so cool how since then, like 8 years later, I haven't seen Carl since then, but how the Lord brought you and Carl, and then we were able to have prayer time for him facing his health challenges now. I'm like, Lord, you're awesome. Like, I just, it's unbelievable. Really, not unbelievable, but it's just astounding. Yeah. Maybe that's a better word, right? Like
it's hard to believe in. All the pieces that moved and how they moved and when they moved.
Right.
Because Carl prayed for me for my cancer in 2016. And so laid hands on me. And so awesome. So I happened to get invited that night when you and I met by Ann to pray for Carl.
Yes.
And so, that's I think part of the beauty of the testimony of the Lord is the level of specificity and complicated intricacies of that person come here, this person there. Okay, so all that converging at some moment that would be like his planning is so huge and so complicated to me in so many ways. Like, how could you have had that person come and then it's not a Jew. We don't know each other. 2 weeks ago, you didn't know Ann, or maybe 3. I can't remember the timeline. And then that she heard you giving a testimony and she happened to be there that night doing some art, like all of the things that we may have really enjoyed and appreciated. He doesn't, or maybe even ignored. He just doesn't waste it.
No, it's not wasted at all.
And then it comes back together. And
it's just so fun how he weaves everybody together like that, right? Like where he could just be like, okay, I'm going to heal Heather and touch me and it's done. But just how his story continues to live on and just encourage. And that's just my whole hope for saying yes to you to be on today. I've never been on a podcast before, but I'm just like, okay, I know the Lord's asking me to do that, right? And I just want people to be encouraged. It's like whatever you're believing God for, like, don't quit believing for it because he's faithful to all he promises. And that's what I would say to people, like, just continue to walk it out. That wasn't just for me. That wasn't just a word for me, but it is like, we just got to keep putting one foot in front of the other because it's so easy to get stuck where we are of thinking, like I said at the beginning, he'll do it for somebody else, but he's not going to do it for me. And that's so not true. Like, he'll do it for all of us, right? And it just looks different for all of us, but that's the blast of being a Christ follower, to see how he's going to do it and the ways he's going to do it and how he's going to use us, and bring other people into the fold and all of that. So that's my awesome story of being healed.
Well, what's funny is typically at the end of the podcast, I ask people, like, what would you want to say to people who are watching or listening, or even to your children or other folks? And you kind of touched on that you just said, like, it's possible. But I would add, if there's anything like you'd want to say to your children or your children's children's children, like, what would you want to impart to them as part of your testimony today? Is there anything that comes to mind?
I have on a little message board in our hallway, I had just changed it, the wording on it the other day, and it says, faithful then, faithful now. And he is. I mean, it's like when I look back on raising kids and then to becoming empty nesters and then to becoming, in-laws now. And it's just like, for times when I look back and think, what was so big, at the time, which anything that we're walking through that's troubling our heart, right? Like he cares about all of that. But if I take time to sit down, and that's what I would say to my kids too, you're going to have hard. Like that's just the world we're in, right? There's going to be hard. But I'm so grateful that my boys and my daughter-in-laws are all following the Lord. And I don't know how people do it without the Lord, Mark. I don't. When I can look back on just so many things in our life and be like, it might have not been as quick of an answer as I wanted, or maybe the answer I thought it was going to be, but he's been so faithful then, faithful now. And I find myself saying that over and over to friends that I have, that are walking through things. It's just like, you're in different seasons of feeling like, I just don't know if he hears me, and he does. He does. But it's just that time that I would say, if you're saying for me specifically, to say to my kids and grandkids and all of that one day, just keep pressing in, like keep him first. And it's his timing is always perfect for us, right? There's so many things he wants to teach us along the way. And it's like, we just can't wish all of that away, because he grows us in those times. He draws us closer in those times, and we learn to rely on him and his strength and his wisdom and all those things, in those times. So I'm just so thankful for his faithfulness in my life. I am. It's hard to put all that into words.
Yes, it certainly is. But you've done a great job testifying of just the miracle of being healed of rheumatoid arthritis. It's huge after 17 years. So thank you. And we just pray that the testimony will just go out, and whoever hears and listens to your testimony will be healed, will be blessed, will be encouraged, and will just come to know our Savior in new and deeper and more intimate, holy way. So that is our hope and our heart for today. So thank you. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. We will talk with y'all later. God bless you. Take care. If you would like to give a testimony of hearing God or seeing a miracle, we would love to hear from you. We invite you to pray and ask the Lord if this is a time for you to share that testimony. And if it is, we would love to hear from you. Please email us. Our email is info@stackingstones.life. info@stackingstones.life. We just pray that the testimony of Jesus will encourage you to pursue him even more. God bless you.